welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's largest platform for entrepreneurs. I'm Sunanda Jaiseelan. Anything and everything that matters to you, we've got it covered here on the show. All of July, we're continuing to put the spotlight on different industries and businesses and how they're reacting as the economy unlocks. Today, we're speaking to Gen X and putting the focus on dating apps. How has the dating industry changed during the pandemic, and how is it going to change even as we're seeing the unlock taking place? All of those questions being answered by our panelists today. Let me quickly introduce them. Snehil Khanor, he's founder, CEO, Truly Madly. Abel Joseph, founder at Isle.co. Anukool Kumar, marketing director, OKcupid. Abel, Snehil, Anukool, thank you very much for your time here on the Leaders of Tomorrow. Talking to our young people about what really is changing when it comes to the dating world and talking about what has worked for you as entrepreneurs. Let me first start by talking about the fact that one of the industries that have been impacted by the pandemic, like most others, has of course been the dating market. You know, people not being able to go out, meet up face to face. What have been perhaps some of the biggest changes that you as entrepreneurs in this space have really seen when it comes to the pandemic? And as we're preparing for the economy to unlock, what changes are you looking at putting in place? How do you think things are going to change, if at all? Abel, maybe I could come to you first.
Sure. So a lot has changed, and I think one of the casualties of the pandemic has been that people can't really meet offline. Right? How
Yeah.
do you date if you can't meet offline? And that's one of the things that I think which made us to relook the entire business as a whole. Because to begin with, in 2019, we had actually launched two new properties. One was called Isle IRL, where we set up speed dating events in three cities, Bangalore, Delhi, and Mumbai, and we were hosting this every Saturday. So that was one property that was really taking off. And we also launched another product called Jalebi, which was only in Bangalore, where people could sign up with their work email IDs and say that they are visiting a certain restaurant curated by us, and people could send them requests to dine with them for a table for two, three, or four. And that was really picking up in Bangalore. It's not really dating, but if you really think about it, that's what dating is today. To have like a very personal, intimate kind of a conversation over food, maybe.
Yeah.
And come the pandemic, we had to shut it all down and really look at what are the possibilities from then on. And so from there, I think we built a lot of features to bring spontaneous interactions online rather than keep it offline only. And we call it Isle Rooms. And yeah, I can
Sure.
probably talk about that in a little more detail later on.
Sure. Sure. Snehil?
So, luckily for us, there was no positive or negative impact of the first wave, right? So other than the first 2 weeks of lockdown, where our ARPUs, etc., were matching what we usually get during holidays in Christmas and New Year, because even people were think in the very vacation mind space. They were making baking banana bread and making dalgona coffees, right? But then when prime minister came again on the TV and said ki, no, this was the first lockdown and there's going to be another lockdown. I think then when then people it really hit people ki, oh, it's a pandemic, not a vacation, right? So we have been growing gradually, and we kept growing in that same pace. We saw some increased pace from tier 2 and tier 3, which I think was because of reverse migration that happened, right? But if I tell you in numbers, so our overall revenue in the last financial year grew by 4x. But
Okay.
cities like Bhubaneswar, Patna, Guwahati, Gwalior, and Indore, these cities revenues, not users, revenues grew more than 10x.
Okay, Anukul, I want to give you the chance to give us your opening comments as well.
Sure. Thank you, Sunanda, and pleasure to be a part of this panel first. A little bit of context will help. So, OkCupid is a dating app. It's a global dating app that's helped people find love for almost 2 decades now. What makes us different is everyone making a profile on OkCupid needs to answer 15 or at least 15 questions out of a list of 3,000 plus questions, and then the algorithm comes into place and matches you on interest, value system, beliefs, etc., etc. To understand, to answer your question, what has been the impact? Let's understand what changed. Work from home, lockdowns, strict measures made sure that all of us had a lot of time in our hand, which meant that more time for relationships as well. And secondly, COVID-19 has hit us like. Especially the second wave, somehow or the other, all of us have gotten impacted by it, and that's where now we seek more emotional comfort out of relationships than ever before, and that's something that has been the biggest learning. So what we are seeing across the country, whether it's the smallest town to the big busiest metros, people are seeking love, and people are craving for these emotional relationships more than ever. And in fact, 91% of our daters were ready to date virtually on Zoom and find real love. So that's something that we saw. And in fact, we saw a 700% odd increase worldwide during March to May 2020 when the onset of pandemic happened. So love is in demand.
Okay, so since we've been very briefly discussing numbers, I want to push that point further. A report suggesting that the Indian dating apps market is about $600 million. This is as of 2020 and is set to grow exponentially. Snehil was talking about 10x is the kind of growth you've seen in tier two, tier three markets, etc. Anupul, you were also giving us some figures. In the next perhaps year or two, as more and more people are perhaps getting comfortable with the idea of using dating apps, what perhaps is the kind of growth that we can anticipate? Let me come to you on the field.
Actually, it's a very interesting, so I have been, I think all of us have been keeping track of Statista, right? So if you would have gone to Statista to check these numbers before August of 2020, right? They were just projecting that by 2024, the overall dating services market will grow to $77 million, right? That included matrimony also. Then in August 2020, they did a in-depth research of India, and they shifted their projection from $77 million to $2.2 billion. So they were wrong by somewhere 30x, right? And I believe this is still conservative because they would not have factored in the growth that is coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Interesting thing is, love marriages has been aspirational in India as well as Bharat since generations, right? For some reason, dating has been a taboo, and now I
Yeah.
think uh, all of us will collectively have to teach them that if you want to do a love marriage, you will have to date, right? And this is what people are now getting to know, and then they are, that is why they are also jumping the uh, jumping on the bandwagon of online dating.
Even as we're talking about growth, and Abel, this question is to you. You were talking about aisle rooms. That really brings me to the question of privacy. I do know a lot of women, I do know a lot of my friends and peers always talk about the question of privacy. Especially as women on dating apps, having your privacy protected, having your identity protected. How are dating apps now, even as more and more people are using dating apps perhaps for the first time, even as you have perhaps a younger profile which is coming onto dating apps? How are entrepreneurs like yourself ensuring that you are first and foremost taking care of the privacy of the people who are using your apps?
So the basic protocols are always there. I mean, every time we have a new release, a major release on the app, exactly like the feature that we're talking about at this point in time, which is rooms, we have these tests that are conducted by professionals to make sure that any of the data that we have, the servers are all secure. But having said that, I think youngsters are a lot more open to experimenting. They do want to download apps, create profiles, and see how things work before deciding if they want to stick on and continue using it. And on Isle, I think what we have done is made it quite far more easier to create a profile than back in the days. And we've taken out some of the more sensitive fields for users to be able to create those profiles. And when it comes to rooms, the way that it works is a user can create a room and other members can enter it, and they can request a 5-minute conversation, a call, an audio call. And there's a reason why this is audio only, and that's mostly because,
Okay.
again, coming to privacy, I don't think we Indians, especially Indian women, no matter how independent she is, she's open to the idea of coming online on a camera and presenting herself to the world, especially when she's looking for a permanent partner, right? So she starts the room, others enter the room, have conversations for 5 minutes, and then at the end of the conversation, the host can choose to match with the guest or not. And the reason why we do
Okay.
that, again, is to establish that chemistry in about 5 minutes, which cannot be done through texting, right? If I said hi, I might have to wait for you to come back the next day to say hello, or the second message. So I think it brings about a lot of efficiency. Yes, it does bring about a lot of privacy questions as well, but I think that's going to get ironed out as we see other apps in the space also adopt such features in terms of audio streaming, video streaming, and I think that's the direction that online dating apps are going to go in.
Gentlemen, I have to take a quick break. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back with us here in Leaders of Tomorrow as part of our India Unlocks LOT special series. Today, we are talking with entrepreneurs from the dating industry. Okay, this question is for Snehil, but if the others want to jump in, please feel free. Snehil, offline you were talking about the fact that a lot of young people these days are open to the idea of seriously exploring relationships or getting serious about their relationships. I want to ask you about how this really plays out when it comes to then. Marriage apps, if I can call it that, your shadi.com, bharatmatrimony.com, matrimony.com, etc., and how they play side by side with dating apps like yourself. Because we've also seen examples, for instance, of matrimony.com that did go out and buy a dating app. We've had a few other examples as well. How does this market really work? How do marriage apps and dating apps really work side by side? What is really the road ahead? What is the potential for growth?
So TG is very different. For matrimony websites, TG is not you and me; it's our parents, right? So all the money, most of the money that comes to them comes from the parents' pocket, right? And if you go on the website, first question is caste, second is gotra, third is family wealth. I don't even know what my gotra is, right? So and they cannot change it because that is working really well. They, for example, Bharat Matrimony is doing some 350 crores of revenue a year, right, and growing 10-15% year on year, right. So it is working for them. But if you look at a report which was done by Google in 2019, so every year they come up with a year in search for India. So they had a
Okay.
dedicated slide in dating versus matrimony. So they had one dedicated slide on dating versus matrimony, which said
Okay.
even though matrimony searches are double of dating queries as of today, but dating queries are growing at 40% year on year, but matrimony is only growing at 13% year on year. So that tells
Okay.
us where the search is going towards, right? And from a user perspective, right? I don't, if I am, so our TG is independent professionals, 25 plus, whichever city, be it in tier 2, tier 3, or tier 1, right? I don't want to start my conversation with a parent if I'm looking for a life partner, or especially if I'm looking for a love story, right? I want to, I don't want to be based on, for example, from a guy's perspective, how much do you earn? What do you do? And from a girl's perspective, how will you, manage work and family? What time will you be back? Khana banana aata hai, right? Do you know how to cook? So
Sure.
this is not how we want to start our journey
You're
of
saying the
finding.
markets are very different.
Yeah, TG is entirely different. They are targeting parents, and they are meeting. So their parents are meeting parents. Here we are helping you, find your forever by yourself for yourself.
Okay. Speaking of differences, Anukul, if you could jump in and really talk about the India market versus international markets, and how India perhaps is very unique, when it comes to the work that businesses like yourself do, and just give us an international flavor of how things are perhaps changing. Maybe we could see some of those trends here in India as well.
Sure. And that's something which is super interesting, and we see that almost on a daily basis. Indian millennials, the target audience that Snail also was talking about, unlike the previous generations, are literally redefining the traditional relationship finding or traditional relationships in itself. What has changed? The biggest thing that is being questioned are gender roles. With access to education, with access to opportunity in India, women are actually leading this revolution, and they are questioning the traditional gender roles. In fact, to give you a statistic, women were sent out 40% more intro messages compared to the previous year in the last one odd year. Uh, and the onset of slow dating, which is they're in no hurry to settle down, they're in no hurry to compromise, they're in no hurry to go for the first possible option, so to say. They want to make their own choice, and the fact that pandemic, there is no pressure of meeting up, and they can take their time to set up these virtual dates, has helped. So overall, dating apps, which was especially in India, which was once considered to be a social experiment, is now a socially acceptable way of finding a partner. So earlier, this was about in your immediate circle, or in a country of arranged marriages, as we spoke about, in your family's immediate circle. So that is the biggest, at least the evolution that India has seen. From an international perspective, and I spoke about how love is in demand, and how there is this need for an emotional connect. In fact, in US, we saw for the first time 86% users are looking for a serious relationship, and that has been a very big paradigm shift. So there is this demand for serious dating, real love, as well as what we are seeing globally as well.
Okay, let me take closing comments, and I want to come to you first, Anukool. For an entrepreneur who is watching today's panel discussion, whether they are in the dating industry or not, if there is one piece of advice that you would want to leave them with about how perhaps the dating market is evolving, what changes you're seeing, how what sort of insights perhaps you would want to leave them with, what would you want to tell us?
Uh, as we spoke about it, this COVID-19 hasn't been easy, and the pandemic hasn't been easy at any aspect, so to say. And from a relationship perspective, what I spoke about, additional time in hand, the fact that you need more emotional connect, it's just brought about slow dating, and that's something is the biggest mindset change that India is seeing. So Indian millennials are spending a lot of time to get to know each other, which means there is a lot of opportunity. There is this rediscovery of the magic of old school romance that exists. There is no compromise anymore. There is no rush. There is no forceful going for the first possible option. So all of this is something that puts forward millennial India at a very, very good opportunity, so to say, to find what they are looking for and to find love on their own terms. And that's something that I think we're all here to provide them.
Okay, to both Snehil and Abel, I do want to very briefly touch upon valuations. You know, Bumble has been in the news for the kind of valuations that we've seen. A lot of businesses which are in the digital first economy are seeing skyrocketing valuations. We're talking about a lot of e-commerce companies that are filing for IPO in the next couple of months. What are valuations looking like for the dating industry as entrepreneurs who are perhaps looking at fundraising? What has that been like for you? What would you want to leave someone who's watching today's interview with? Snehil, to you first.
So for the budding entrepreneurs, I would just like to say be frugal and agile. I think that is the mantra that I follow and has worked really well for me. And regarding valuations, I think Bumble has set a very nice benchmark of, I think, if not, I think it was 14x of their revenue, right? If I remember right. So, for example, Match Group valuation is also of the profit they get some 50x or more, right? So, being digital first, I think our advantage is we don't have any costs. There is no cost of goods, right?
Yeah.
There is negligible cost of operations, and there is immense growth potential, right? We are just starting on tier 2 and tier 3. So I think valuation side, it's 14x. Even 14x is not very high when you look at it that way. If you look at in the next 10, 15 years. So yeah,
Sure.
I think it's good. No complaints.
Abel, I'll give you the last word.
Well, yeah, I would just have to echo that. I think, like Snehil mentioned, Bumble is at a 15x of their annual run rate. Match is doing slightly better than that. and I think we deserve similar valuations. But of course, this is a subjective, discussion. And I think when you look at the Indian market, so we have at least one front runner, which is Bharat Matrimony, to look up to, right? So like again, Snehil mentioned they're growing at about 15% year on year, and I think some of us are growing at 100 or even 200% year on year. And so when you bring in the growth factor as well as the valuations of the West as well as the East, similar businesses,
Sure.
and also we having to, and as we discussed earlier on, India being or potentially being the second largest market, I think we do command that 15x of ARR kind of valuations. But of course, we will need the investor community also to come together and shake hands with us to make it official. And I think in the next couple of years, we will be able to achieve that.
All right, Abel, Snehil, Anukool, thank you so much for your time. That's all we could manage to pack into today's panel. But if you have any feedback for us, as always, we love hearing from you. Do let us know. Our contact details are on your screens as we speak. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.